Berlin Main Station is my favorite train station in the world. It's everything a station should be in so many ways. A multimodal transportation hub, an iconic urban landmark, a place to shop and get the things you need, and it even has offices. And while there are so many great stations out there, from Grand Central to Shinjuku, Châtelet-Les and Antwerp Central, it's my view that nothing balances form and function as well as Berlin Hauptbahnhof, which manages to be awe-inspiring and human all at once. Now, Berlin's biggest station is not perfect. The bathroom situation is bad, the elevators are also bad, and you might get wet waiting for your train. But in terms of structures that physically embody the potential and the incredible technical efforts that go into public transport, I don't think anything else comes close. Hey there, if you're new here, this is RM Transit, a channel about transit and cities around the world. Make sure to subscribe for more videos like this one. Berlin Main Station is an epic facility, sitting just north of the Spree and the Parliamentary District in central Berlin, in an area that historically has felt a bit like the middle of nowhere, but which has developed a lot since the station was built. Better yet, the transport links to the area have only been getting better every few years, further cementing the station's importance in the city. What makes Berlin Main rather unique is that it handles trains on two different perpendicular levels, with an underground part of the station serving the north-south main line tunnel, which was built at the same time as the Hauptbahnhof and serves long-distance and regional trains, and an elevated section of platforms serving the Stadtbahn, an east-west elevated rail corridor that existed long before the station, and which carries every type of train, from S-Bahn all the way up to high-speed services through Berlin. The experience of entering the station at ground level is just that, an experience. From S-Bahn trains up above to long-distance ones down below, you can see almost everything, from the trains to the station structure and the various walkways, elevators, and escalators shuttling people around. There's just something so cool about standing in a huge structure and seeing trains fly through it above and below you, sort of like a skyscraper lobby filled with glass elevators. There are a total of 5 main levels of the station, and the level you enter on off the street is right in the middle of what can only be called a delicious transit sandwich. Since so much open space was left in the structure, you're constantly reminded of its scope and the movement of passing trains and crowds. On both sides of the station outdoors, there are large plazas, though the one to the north is a mess of scooters, bikes, people smoking, and cars picking people up. It feels pretty unfinished, and it's a bit of a disappointing exit from this most special transit station, though I do appreciate seeing above-ground utilities because I like infrastructure. Fortunately, the plaza fronting onto the Spree is much larger and nicer to make up for it, and from the plaza, not only can you take in the scope of the station, but also the giant tower with a DB sign on it and the offices which flank either side of the main hall. Back inside the station, the levels above and below ground level act as transfer concourses to connect various vertical access routes to the platforms, which each have multiple sets of escalators and elevators connecting them, as well as staircases for the lower level platforms. On the Stadtbahn level, there are 3 large platforms, with one serving frequent S-Bahn trains and 2 more serving regional and intercity services. There are actually holes punched in these platforms, so you can look down at the trains humming along in the basement many levels below, as a constant reminder of the scale of the building, but probably not a good thing if you have vertigo or a fear of heights. You've probably also noticed that the top level of the station is on a curve, and this adds to the station's coolness factor and also makes for some really nice train photography. Now, as it turns out, there are only 4 tracks on the Stadtbahn, so the design of the top level of the station creates more platform tracks than exist on either end of it. But this is a smart design because each directional intercity and regional track headed into the station splits into 2 platform tracks. This keeps a track free should there be a problem with the train on the other track, enables easy cross-platform interchange in the same direction, since all trains using a single platform are headed in the same direction, and perhaps most elegantly, since each platform is served by a single track, this allows trains to dwell for longer on each platform face. As you can see, the top platform level, and thus the whole station, is semi-open air, and herein lies one of the issues with the station. A lack of canopies at the ends of the top level platforms. Make sure you bring an umbrella if you're taking a long train from the upper level on a rainy day. Putting aside the trains and mobility for a moment, the middle 3 levels of the station, the ground level and what I'll call the transfer concourses above and below it to the platform levels, function like a mall. The central atrium sitting above the platforms for the north-south mainline tunnel provides the great views I mentioned earlier, as well as the vertical circulation, and each of these levels are surrounded by shops, restaurants, services, and some passenger lounges. Is Berlin Main Station the best example of a train station as a mall in the world? No. Probably not, but it's also far from the worst, and with such great views all over the station, I never find the need to plonk down at a cafe to kill time. And to be clear, it's not just cafes. There are actually a lot of retail options and services like car rentals, though why you'd rent a car here of all places is beyond me. Heading down to the lower level, there's still a sense of scale, but it shifts from vertical to horizontal with a long open cavern which sits around the giant island platforms connected to the north-south mainline tunnel. One really cool thing is that this station acknowledges how awesome it is, and there is a model of the station in the station, which probably also has its own mini model of the station within it. From this level, you also have the connection to the U-Bahn, which is great. Simply walk across through a short tunnel and drop down onto the platform, and thanks to the semi-recent U5 extension, you can get to a ton of different places in the city pretty easily. Better yet, you can also get to the trams and the station's bus terminal without crossing the street, using the same underground concourse which connects to the U-Bahn, which is very nice and thoughtful planning. This allows trams to remain at street level, serving a normal, if fancier and larger than usual tram stop with stairs directly into the station. Now, as I've said before, Berlin Hauptbahnhof is not without problems, even if I think they're more annoyances than fatal flaws. The transfer between levels, particularly top and bottom, does feel long, though in practice it's all escalators, so the actual distance isn't too bad, and there are a lot of escalators too, so I wouldn't be worried about having to climb. However, the unique circular elevators are painfully slow, and so you basically would never use them unless you have to. Worse still, the design takes up enough space that you could probably fit 2 conventional elevators in the same profile if the design had tried to be a little less form over function. A more pressing issue is space. There's quite a bit of it on the platforms, but within the station, a lot of the other walkways are narrow because of the vertical space for the openings on one side or the shops on the other. This also means that there just aren't a ton of places for people to actually dwell that isn't a platform, which people generally didn't appear to be doing. I'll also say that the bus terminal, if I can call it that, across the street from the station, and the whole north frontage that I mentioned earlier leave a lot to be desired, and feel a lot like a parking lot shaped stain on what is otherwise a super impressive facility. The last feature that bothers me is the bathrooms, or lack thereof. My complaint can be summarized as such: big station, 1 bathroom, costs money, fare gates, very silly. Check out my recent Substack article for the full rant. It's free to subscribe and well worth your time. With my minor quibbles out of the way, from the lowest level we can descend to the last set of platforms, of which there are 4 islands, each connected to one of the 4 tracks on the north-south mainline in the same way as on the top level of the station, with each track fanning to serve both sides of an island platform at the station. The platforms themselves are epic, super wide, super long, and straight, with more vertical circulation and better passenger flow than those on the top level, truly allowing huge numbers of people to wait along the platform for trains and change between different services, reflecting them being built in coordination with the tunnel. Heading back up, you can actually see the next big project in upgrading the station after the recent extension of the tram line serving it to the west. This is where the future second north-south S-Bahn tunnel will be, just beyond the current U-Bahn platform, and construction is well underway. This project will be incredibly useful because otherwise going north or south from here means trying to grab some random regional or IC train, and they aren't all from the same platform or arriving at the same frequency as those on the S-Bahn. So with our tour complete, what makes this station so great? Well, for one, it manages to pack a ton of uses into a station site in a very elegant way. From shops to offices and services, and the larger district around the station has tons more offices, residential apartments, and a bunch of hotels. The station is also a great example of an integrated transport hub. While yes, it is a bit of a walk from say the top level of the station to the tram stop, the distance actually isn't that great and the walk is basically entirely protected from the weather. It's a lot better than many stations out there. It's also a station which was planned for good train operations, and while it's not perfect, I have seen far, far worse. In large part, it feels like Berlin Main Station is a victim of its own success, with so many people using the station and interchanging here. What's good is that all of the space in the station means that most of the problems with it can be fixed. New washrooms can be added, more links could be built to platforms, and more weather protection could also be provided. But in the meantime, the station remains my favorite in the world, and an absolute must-see for anyone who likes cities or transportation. Thanks for watching.